Hey y'all, I want to introduce you to Starting Block, the best co-working space in Madison. If you work from home or you are new to Madison, or you just feel like you don't have a professional community, you should definitely check out Starting Block. Many of you may know Starting Block as Madison's startup hub, but it's a lot more than that. They're constantly hosting networking and professional events for the community, and their co-working membership rates are super competitive. So if you're tired of working from home or you want to build your professional community, check out Starting Block at startingblockmadison.org. And that's startingblockmadison.org. Today on CityCast Madison. A Madison institution has a new leader. YWCA Madison, the well over century-old social justice organization headquartered downtown, has a new permanent CEO, Jerry Paredes Vasquez. You might not know this, but YWCA is the largest affordable housing provider for single women in Dane County. And their overarching mission is to dismantle racism and empower women. Each year, they hold a major racial justice summit aimed at tackling institutional racism. And that summit is coming up next month. We sat down with Jerry to ask about her leadership vision as the new CEO and what's on deck for this year's summit. It's Monday, August 19th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Jerry, hello.
Hey. Hola. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and you are the new permanent CEO of YWCA Madison. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm still just really deep in the gratitude and the joy and the honor to be able to lead this beautiful 118 years old organization and to build on the legacy of these past years, and especially building on the 7 years that we had with Vanessa McDowell Atlas and just her awesomeness. So I'm still kind of like, it actually happened. Now it gets to be permanent.
Yes, and 118 years serving this community. Holy smokes. You previously served for years as YWCA's Race and Gender Equity Director, and then recently served as interim CEO following, as you mentioned, former CEO Vanessa McDowell's departure this spring. We actually talked to Vanessa right when she was departing, almost for like an exit interview about her legacy and what racial justice work she still thinks that our community needs. So we'll toss that interview in our show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. And she was really thrilled for you to be the next leader.
Oh.
How are you, from your own unique life experience, approaching this leadership role?
This is a very special year for many reasons. And these are the kind of special way that is not really planned in the way that this was planned intentionally. But this year actually happens to be what would have been the 100 years birthday anniversary of my granduncle, my Tio Antonio. And my Tio Antonio has been the reason why my heart was awakened to social justice work. My Tio Antonio, many people that has been in practice with me knows that he was a self-taught puppeteer and an author in Bolivia, beloved. He became very, very beloved. And the big part of his work was really helping himself, but really all of us notice how, the impact of the violence of things like colonialism and racism and sexism and all of these violent forms of really creating fabricated separations inside ourselves and in society are really things that we are called to heal from and to tend to and to reimagine the ways that we understand ourselves, we relate to each other, the way that we build really everything, because we actually create and build absolutely everything, like systems are things that we create, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was really a life inspiration for me, and he gifted me with a kaleidoscope that now gets to be the guiding metaphor of the summit this year. And with invitation to reflect, connect, and create new worlds. And this kaleidoscope became really a life metaphor for me. And I became, of course, fascinated by kaleidoscopes and the idea that in order for the whole to reveal its full beauty, we need to be very intentional about the ways that we move, within ourselves, with each other, and the things that we bring to life together. And so I studied kaleidoscopes. One of my undergrad essays was all about kaleidoscopes. I became so fascinated by them. And so the fact that, when Vanessa decides to transition and trust me with the interim falls on the 100th anniversary of my granduncle. And I was actually planning to go to Bolivia before I knew of this transition. and so then it was like, that's not going to happen this year. But it really became even a more beautiful way to also honor my story, my path, my ongoing learning and unlearning and healing and transformation as any other human being in this world, with actually first saying yes to the trust that I was given to support our beloved organization and the collective of people that we are, that is really a brilliant collective of people in the transition, and then to really listen deep in me. How did it feel to consider the permanent position, knowing that as any other human being, I also have growth and learning in so many ways. And that comes with just anyone. And it also comes in that way with me, but really listening if there was a yes there. And there was a yes. And I honored that. And now here I am.
What an alignment. That is so crazy in a beautiful way. The 100-year anniversary of your tío, your uncle, who really sparked your journey in racial healing and racial justice and looking at how we can have systems change, would be able to be the backdrop or the forefront of you taking on this role and really spearheading the Racial Justice Summit. That's one of the biggest things that YWCA Madison does during the year. And I want to ask you about that and even maybe talk a little bit more about the theme. But before we get too much into the summit, I just want to ask more broadly for folks listening, what does the YWCA Madison do on the ground here in Madison?
Well, what I like to say about our work is that we do race and gender equity work in multiple ways. Our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, dignity, freedom for all. And we do this in multiple ways. Part of it is creating spaces for learning and movement building, like the summit. We also work with organizations to transform their organizational culture in a way that centers race and gender equity through the Creating Equitable Organizations program and other community offerings. But we also do a lot of work around housing justice with our residential housing programs. We have actually residents that have lived in this building where I'm joining you from for decades.
That's downtown, right by the Children's Museum, like Kitty Corner.
Yes, right in front of the Children's Museum. And we also have transitional housing services, a shelter. And this is really a community of a couple of hundred folks, plus children, that actually gets access to residential housing services. And then we also have community housing services through multiple different programs, one of them being Steps to Stability and other kinds of support for women that are facing challenges to access housing, which is a huge thing that we continue to face, especially in our communities of color. And so that is kind of like our housing work. And then we have also our work around employment and economic justice. Some of you might have heard about the YWeb Academy Career Program. And this is a program that really serves primarily women and youth of color that are looking to have a career in the IT world. And so it's an intense program around programming skills. But of course, because we're the Y, it's not just about the IT skills. It has a wrapped around restorative justice approach to it. And so that is part of that work. Our YW transit services that serve folks that are underserved or sometimes not even served by our transportation system, so that we can make sure that they have a safe way to get to their jobs and other everyday activities, and our license recovery program. And of course, our restorative justice work, right? Like our restorative justice work that has been for more than a decade in the schools, as well as later on in the community through community organizations. And what I love about our restorative justice work is that it's authentically youth-led and youth-centered, and that kind of like takes many different forms. So whenever I think of our work, I'm kind of like, it is about race and gender equity in multiple forms, and it's also very broad. It's about direct service. It's about shaping culture, and it's also about learning and movement building. So it goes all around.
So you're listening to CityCast Madison. You clearly care about what's happening in our city and have fantastic taste in podcasts. I've got a recommendation for another local news podcast you gotta check out. It's called 365 Amplified. Every week, the award-winning reporting team behind Madison 365 digs into their most important stories from the week. They do stories and perspectives you likely won't get from many other mainstream outlets. They invite on community leaders, lawmakers, artists, and more for candid conversations. Recent guests include State Senate candidate Samba Balde, celebrity chef Elena Terry, and Ford Madison striker Derek Gebhardt. They drop new episodes every Friday at madison365.org/amplified. You can also search 365 Amplified wherever you listen to our show.
Want to teach your kids financial literacy, but not sure where to start? Greenlight can help. With Greenlight, parents can keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens use a card of their own to build money confidence. As a parent, you can send instant money transfers, set up chores, automate allowance, and more. It's a convenient way to run your household, customized to your family's needs, and the easy way to raise financially smart kids. Get started with Greenlight today and get your first month free at greenlight.com/Spotify.
We are coming up on your big racial justice summit that is massive in so many ways, and impact and numbers. And I'd love to get a sense from you, who is the summit for? And generally, how many folks attend? I should say this is coming up in September, September 25th, 26th, and 27th.
Yes, our summit is coming up on the September 25th to the 27th. The first 2 days are virtual. So these are virtual engagements, and the last day is a full in-person day that, of course, will end with a rooftop party, because we must end with a rooftop party.
We must dance to Salt and Pepper.
We must dance to Salt and Pepper, and dancing is part of the changes, part of the transformation, part of liberation, and part of racial justice too. And so, yes, we must end with a rooftop party. And who is the summit for? I do think that the summit is for people that are open to their own learning, their unlearning, their transformation, to be open about exploring what is present in our own story as it relates to who are we, who we need to be in the work of justice, that it's always present, right? Like there is no generation that has not been facing the call for justice in that particular time. And so that includes, educators, that includes all kinds of professionals in nonprofit and private sector, and also includes families, includes mothers and fathers and sisters and partners, right? And more, what we're also trying to do with the summit is to make it an intergenerational space, because we have so much to learn across different generations, right? Like there are so many ways in which youth sometimes gives us a wake-up call about the things that we have normalized, and they can be amazing leaders for this work. There is so many times where elders have some really profound insights about what might have not been what you were thinking it was going to be. And guess what? We need to also hear that, right? And then we're all here in the middle trying to figure things out. And so this year in particular, we are also kind of like amping the intergenerational. This has been happening for some years now, but this year we've been even more intentional to make sure that in the sessions we do have a spread of people from different generations, including youth and elders, because those conversations matter and they're very important for this ongoing work that we need to do.
Well, I love that too, because it's a callback to the theme. So Kaleidoscope, Reflect, Connect, and Create New Worlds. It was inspired by your tío, Yes. It is inspired by family and that intergenerational handoff towards the work that needs to be done and the joy that needs to be embodied. And last year was my first year going, and it's no small thing in saying that it was life-changing. And my impression was that tons of local organizations and businesses send their staff to your summit to get real hands-on racial justice training and really participate in racial healing work. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And I think it's so important, and we're so grateful for that, precisely for what you were saying. I think, a lot of the times, we get sometimes to transactionalize conferences. And I think that's something that we're trying to disrupt, right? Like the whole idea is that this is meant to be an experience, hopefully a transformative experience itself for every person that joins the summit, right? And then, of course, the things we get to do with this after will come after, right? So we're always inviting people to, yes, you'll get access, to the materials, but above everything, take a moment to actually be present for this experience.
The presence is so key. And it's so easy today to not slow down and be with the people you're with.
Yes.
So I love that you pointed that out. And one of the things that really struck me from my experience was not just talking the talk of inclusion and honoring diversity, but really walking the walk. And the summit always has an opening ceremony that sets the scene. And it included spiritual grounding and a native land recognition from a native voice that was frankly like so comprehensive and beautiful. It brought me to tears.
Oh, yes.
Can you talk about that aspect, why you prioritize that kind of time?
Absolutely. I think what I feel called to share is that we collaborate with a Racial Justice Summit curators team. It's actually a multiracial, multigender team, which is, I think, huge. And more also an intergenerational team. Like, shout out to our new youth members too. And this is the thing, like that is important because the way that we can create things that are speaking about where we want to go and how we want to move with each other needs to be in alignment with the process of how we actually bring things to life, right? And so we are very intentional of making sure that we are creating a collaborative process for the creation of the Racial Justice Summit that is in itself transformative, right? And so one of the spaces is absolutely our Summit Curators team, which is a team of community members that come from many different walks of life that are multiracial, multigender, and some are, educators, some are advocates, some are practitioners. And so that's kind of like one of the spaces. And the other one is the community of practitioners that keeps on growing. It's an open community to folks that want to be in relationship and practice with folks creating different experiences and spaces. And I wanted to name that because I think that us being able to create what we create can only be possible if we are in integrity of relationship and process with what we want to see. And so conversations that end up being the opening that you experience is because we are in these spaces reflecting about how can we make sure that this is not a transactional space, but it's an actually transformative space.
I think folks listening are probably like, what is this larger than life summit they're talking about? And it absolutely is larger than life. And I feel like, I don't know, is it fair to say like hundreds of people are involved in the summit?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's massive. And local organizations are there, right? Like what kinds of organizations typically participate? If you could share some, because last time I went, I heard from school leaders, elected officials, youth leaders,
Yeah. So I will say, like many of us, because of 2020, we all have to, reimagine our offerings virtually. And the summit was not an exception. So we end up doing the virtual version of it, which is growing in its reach out beyond Madison, definitely in the state and sometimes beyond as well. So folks that have experienced the virtual version tend to come back and then it seems like sharing with folks. And so that keeps growing. So I would say like in the virtual version of it, the first 2 days, we are always about like 1,000 people. The biggest one we had virtual, I think, was beyond 1,500. And then for the in-person day, we are usually about 700 people. So that is on, this year on September 27.
And you can feel that energy.
You can feel the energy. Yes, yes. And so, yes. So we have elected officials coming. We have government employees from the city, from the state, different nonprofits send their staff, and also private organizations. And of course, we, constantly are grateful for some of the support through sponsorships, for example, from True Stage and other sponsors that support us, making sure that we can have this being a space that is accessible. We offer scholarships as well. So there is up to 3% of the total attendance of the summit that we always give as a minimum of a scholarship. So we're kind of like always trying to, make sure that people can join. Yeah. So I would say, I think that's what makes it also interesting because the reach is very broad. there are sometimes, folks that are working with youth or folks that are, as you were saying, are collaborating with the school district. The school district always sends a good group as well. Lately, we have also been more intentional of making space for young adults that are still, in their early years of their university years, that we can actually make sure that they can come, because again, that makes it really interesting to have more of like an intergenerational space.
Yeah. I got it was some spicy public forums last year in the big, large group with some of the younger voices were just like, hey, y'all are not doing the thing you said you were. And
Yes.
you had, local leaders sitting right there who could respond right away. It's really electric. And, I could talk to you about it for hours. But people are just going to have to sign up and find out about it. And registration is still open for the conference, right?
Yes. So registration is open until August 26th. And you can find all of the information in our website. I'll definitely share all of that. And there's multiple possibilities you can register for just the virtual summit, or as well the virtual and the in-person summit. Some folks also sometimes choose to join just for the in-person summit day. And so there's, multiple ways and multiple types of tickets. We also have this thing that, we created, I think about 3 years ago, and it has been a success. And I also love because it's basically asking us to bring our people. So it's a group ticket that you can purchase with a group of friends. And then it has a very substantial discount. So you can find all of the information of this. Yes, I just love the idea of just grab your friends, come, and so people can find information on the website. I think the other thing that I don't want to lose saying about the summit is that the summit also is in collaboration and relationship with national authors and with national leaders in racial justice work. And every year, we have the joy of really welcoming really amazing folks. And this year is no exception. So I wanted to share a little bit of kind of like our national leaders for this year, because I get so excited.
Yeah, who's coming?
Yes. So for the 2 virtual days that we have, the opening this year will have a collaboration between Dr. Yolanda Ciali-Ruiz, who is a national author that, going back to the theme of reflect, connect, create new worlds, Dr. Yolanda Ciali-Ruiz, apart from being just a gorgeous poet and a really skilled educator, she created this frame that is called Archaeology of Self, that is basically an invitation to be really curious about what is present in our story for the work of justice. So she's going to be in dialogue with a local, really brilliant person. Her name is Vera Naputi. Vera Naputi is an amazing hip-hop educator that recently published a book in collaboration with youth. And so we are, finalizing details of what that space is going to be. We'll definitely include also a youth leader. But I'm just excited that the start will be this national and local powerful opening for our summit. And then the second day, usually the morning has intergenerational and a generative dialogue. And some of the folks that are coming to be is Ruth King. Ruth King is a national author of one of the most known books is Mindful of Race, also author and just an amazing activist. And she's going to be part of this dialogue with Kazu Haga, the author of Healing Resistance. And he's also part of the leadership team at the Othering and Belonging Institute. And just a gorgeous human being. And then our closing practice is that the closing is always, yes, a keynote, but there's also an invitation to practice with some of our authors and teachers. I get so excited about this. So, and I have to send a shout out to Libby because she had the vision for this closing.
Libby Tucci.
Libby Tucci are amazing.
All hail.
Yes, she's amazing, race and gender equity lead practitioner, and of course with the team, Mike C and Samaje, this speaks so much to their visions and their work. But the closing will be a dialogue and a practice between Ijoma Oluo and Prentice Hemphill. And so
I'm reading their book right now, Prentice.
Yes. So you're reading How We Heal?
How We Heal, yep.
I heard this book is a sipper, which in our world means you have to take one by one and sit with it, which it doesn't surprise me because Prentice, they are so deep and
full. It's full,
right?
Yeah, in a good way.
And then Yes, in the best way.
Two huge names in the social and racial justice spheres. That's amazing.
Yes.
Before we let you go, what work do you think that the city of Madison still needs to do or invest more resources towards the summit and YWCA's broader ultimate aim to end racism and empower women?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. What I will say, I do think there is some of this. And so I do think that there needs to be more of this and kind of like the expanding of this, which is really about putting the resources and the energy in transformative versus transactional work. And I'll give you an example. We talk a lot about housing, right? But housing is not just the roof over someone's head, especially when we are supporting folks that are facing barriers for housing. So we need to have a broader conversation around housing justice that is very honest about everything that makes it for a person to experience dignity and for a person to experience love and for a person to experience community in the presence of having a secure housing and actually invest on that. I'm not saying that there is none of that, but I do think that too often that gets to be limited and there is more, energy in things that are more transactional, but that are not really about this goal, which is like, how can we actually transform the ways that we are moving with each other, the ways that we're making things possible. And that's just one example. I can think of many different examples in all of the areas of work that we have. But if we engage that mindset intentionally, then frankly, anything is possible.
Jerry Paredes Vasquez, oh my goodness. Thank you so, so much for giving us a peek at what's to come this year and your plans as the new leader of YWCA and things that we can chew on as well on how to move in the city of Madison.
Thank you so much. Much love to everyone out there.
That's Jerry Paredes Vasquez, CEO of YWCA Madison. The 2024 YWCA Racial Justice Summit will be next month, virtually on September 25th and 26th, and in person at Monona Terrace on September 27th. If you are interested in learning more or registering for this year's summit, head to our show notes for a link. That registration, so you know, closes on August 26th. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin. If you enjoyed this show, why not share this episode with someone you know who really cares about dismantling institutional racism? All right, we'll be back here tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Ciao.